onto other issues. When you give money to a charity, you do so under the assumption that the money you donate is going to a worthy cause. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case. In recent years, more and more charity scams have been popping up, and I have investigative journalist Rick Outson with me now to discuss some of the biggest charity scams in America. So Rick, rather than helping those in need, it seems like a lot of charities out there today are really just preying on the kindness of American citizens. Is that what you found?
Yeah, really. I mean, what we're looking at, and the Tampa Bay Times did a great job on this with the help of the Center for Investigative Reporting, and they listed the 50 worst charities, and they use innocuous names or names that are slightly like the authentic charities. And they really are just shells for these private consulting groups and fundraising groups to just rake off millions of dollars for themselves, and less than 2 to 3% end up going to the cause that they're for. I mean, the number one group or foundation was Kids Wish Network, which kind of sounds like Make-A-Wish,
yeah,
Farron, but it's not. It raised millions and millions of dollars, paid itself huge salaries. More than 90% of the money went to the fundraisers, not to the kids in need.
Well, I think a lot of times too, and you nailed it with that, is that they're picking names that are so similar to something else out there, not quite the same. So when they call up these people, they do these cold calls. Actually, I many years ago, I used to work at one of these telemarketing firms, and I was there for 2 days. We were soliciting funds for a fire department up in Nebraska, I believe, and that was located in Gulf Breeze, Florida. Now, the reason I left, the second day I was there, I asked the people, I said, well, exactly how much of this money is going to these firefighters in Nebraska? Why are we in Florida raising money for firefighters in Nebraska? And they said, well, it's only about 10 to 15% of the money is going to make it up there. But they tried to justify it by saying, look, we have call centers all over the country, we do marketing, we give out these stickers and a t-shirt if you donate enough, so that has to make up for the rest. That's where most of the money's going. And of course they were very adamant about, plus this is paying your salary. And I said, well, right, not anymore. But that seems to be what's happening across the country. They pick a name that sounds like something well-known, like Kids Wish, which, like you said, sounds like Make-A-Wish. They're essentially stealing money from people, and it's not going to really help anybody, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, I've got the list of the top 10 charities that made this worst charities in America. Kids Wish Network was number 1. Cancer Fund of America. Cancer's another big word that works with these charities. Children's Wish Foundation International. American Breast Cancer Foundation. And then the other one is to go after law enforcement or firefighters. Number 5 on the list is Firefighters Charitable Foundation. Raised $64 million over the last 10 years. Less than 2% of it actually made it to any firefighters or into any foundation helping firefighters. We got the International Union of Police Association, the National Veteran Service Fund. This is really a scam. I mean, it's really bad, and we've got to do something about it.
Right. Well, where's the money going? If somebody donates $100 to this charity and 2 or 3% goes to the charity, where does that other 97%, where is all that money going?
Well, it's going to the fundraisers. Then these charities hire consulting companies, which are owned by the people that founded the charity. It goes to buy cars, it goes into salaries. It's really spread over a very small group of people who get very, very wealthy. The Tampa Tribune, the Tampa Bay Times, in doing this story, they located a charity, Woman-to-Woman Breast Fund, in Florida, and they found that they got sought out by one of these fundraisers. They were taking in, at the time, for their little foundation, they might take in $10,000 to $15,000 a year. They're now taking in millions of dollars. All the founders have paid themselves salaries. They now have cars for the husband and the wife and the daughter. And the fundraiser is making millions upon. They've raised over $6 million in their last reporting period. And they're averaging $10,000 to $12,000 a year actually going to help with mammograms out of $6 million. But they seek these people out, and it's a target-rich environment.
And a lot of times, too, from that Tampa Bay Times story, is that these companies or these charities will actually be set up for nothing more than the benefit of the family that runs them, their own companies. There was one in South Florida, I believe, where they started this charity, but then they paid their son, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make videos for the charity. They were paying his company to make the videos for the charity. And so this is a way they can pull in all this money, they can justify the expense on paper, but it's staying in the family. It's not going out there, it's not helping the people who need it. And so, what do we do? What does a consumer do? How do we know if we get that soliciting phone call, if we get that email, if we get that mail out? How do we find out who's good and who's not?
Well, the Better Business Bureau does a great job of it. The Federal Trade Commission recommends getting to know the charity. If someone calls, check it out. Be sure the name is exactly what you think it is. Ask if the caller is a paid fundraiser. How much does it actually go to benefit the people that the charity is supposed to be helping? Don't ever give out any personal information on any credit cards. Don't mail cash. Check with, there are tons of websites out there to check out these charities. Better Business Bureau does a great job. You've got the Charity Navigator, Charity Watch, GuideStar will let you look at the actual tax returns of these companies. But it's very, very, you have to go into it skeptical whenever you get a phone call about any charity. If it says cancer, if it says firefighter, if it says law and order, it's, kids, it's, sadly, more often than not, it's a scam. The good charities don't do this.
Right, and another thing that the story from South Florida brought up is that a charity should never give less than 65% of the money that they bring in to the actual charity. So if you get that phone call, if they say, well, we give 40% to our consultants, that's not right. It should never be more than 35% going to consultants and salaries and staff and all of that, 65% a bare minimum to go to the charity. And speaking of which, these consultants that come out and they meet with these charities, because there are a lot of charities that start in this country that have the best of intentions. Mm-hmm. But then you have these greedy, money-hungry consultants that come out there, they co-opt these charities, and they raise millions upon millions of dollars for them. But then what happens after these consultants get a hold of these charities?
Right. Well, they settled. I mean, they settled because, let's say they're doing a golf tournament. Maybe they'll bring in 8,000 to 10,000, maybe even 20,000. These consultants come in and say, okay, I can double that for you. You can make $50,000 a year if you let us handle your fundraising. Now, they don't tell them necessarily that they're going to be raising, $10 million, of which you're going to get 50,000. But over time, that number keeps going up, and they start realizing that they can now take a salary, that they can pay their kids, and they're sort of guided in how to scam the system. Like you said, how can you set up a video company that your child can run, or how can you, if you're going to do research, pay your company, another company that you own, to do the research project that you want done. It really does prey on people, and we just barely touched on it, Farron, but the other piece is they really prey on the elderly. When they're calling people, they're preying on some of the older people in our community and playing off of their emotions, saying the word cancer, saying the words kids, getting them into a conversation, and then once they tap that well, they're going to go back over and over again asking for more money, possibly a different charity or even the same charity. But they will take that money from the people that at least can afford to do it.
Well, Rick Outzen, publisher of the Independent Weekly, thank you so much for telling us this story today.
Thank you, Phil.